I am a domineering, arrogant rich second-generation heir. After forcibly marrying the icy campus beauty Willow, who never loved me, I even made her give birth to a son for me. 5 years into our marriage, Willow still has to cook for me, brew tea for me, wash my feet, massage me, and attend to me in bed every single day. Otherwise, at night she will inevitably face family discipline. There's no helping it. I enjoy watching the look on her face, hating me, yet still forced to serve me. As for my son Jack, he definitely can't be idle either. Every day he has to play games for me, do my daily quests, and act as my gaming companion. Under no circumstances do I allow him to slack off and just focus on studying all day. When it comes to the hierarchy of this household, I have it completely under control. Until one day, a row of bullet comments suddenly floated before my eyes. The bullet comments read, "The vicious male supporting role is finally about to exit the story. The male lead Makoto returns like a king. Today he even took Jack out to eat KFC. The story is finally getting back on track. He bullies our female lead every day, and he's always yelling at our Jack. Luckily, in the future the mother and son will kick him out of the house for the sake of the male lead. In the end, that playboy rich heir George will end up on the streets, get hit by a car, and become paralyzed from the waist down. Just imagining the male lead and the mother and son visiting the hospital together to mock the crippled him makes me feel so satisfied." When I saw this, rage instantly burned through my chest. Being cheated on would already be bad enough, but plotting to murder her own husband too. I suddenly lifted my leg, and splashed a faceful of water onto my wife, who was washing my feet, and my son, who was squatting beside me with a miserable expression while completing my daily game tasks. Chapter 1. Both of them looked completely confused. I stammered. "Wife, how could I trouble you with something like this? I have hands and feet, I can do it myself." Jack frowned his tiny brows together. His little brain clearly couldn't understand why I was suddenly acting on a whim. While wiping his face, he asked, "Dad, what are you doing?" I quickly grabbed my phone back and said, "Nothing. Go study. You don't have to play anymore." Jack's eyes immediately lit up. I swallowed, then looked again at my wife, who was half squatting on the floor with foam still covering one hand. I said, "You get up too." Compared to Jack, Willow was much calmer. She seemed used to my unpredictable temper. Calmly, she stood up and went to get a towel. The bullet comments immediately started discussing, "Just look at how humiliated the female lead and Jack were just now. The more humiliation they suffer now, the more satisfying it'll be when they slap the male supporting role in the face later. He pressures our Jack every day to play games and orders our female lead around to serve him. He's seriously tired of living." Silently watching the scrolling comments, I thought, so I'm the vicious male supporting role, and my wife is the female lead of this world. Not only must I step aside for the male lead, but even Jack will eventually acknowledge the male lead as his father. After the male lead appears, he will successfully redeem my wife and son, letting them see that besides me, there exists such an outstanding and wonderful man in this world. Then the three of them will live happily together as a family. My fists clenched. Willow is one thing, after all. Our marriage was arranged, and there was never any emotional foundation between us. But Jack, I looked at my son standing obediently to the side. Although he's always neglecting proper things and obsessing over studying, he is still my biological son. How could he possibly mistake the enemy for his father? So I cleared my throat twice and asked, "Jack, if your mom and I got divorced, who would you go with?" Jack froze for a moment, then his little brows knitted together again. He pressed his lips together and said coldly, "Dad, don't make meaningless assumptions." Speechless, I lifted my head and met Willow's indifferent gaze. Her eyes were like a pool of still, lifeless water. She walked over, crouched down, and said, "Don't talk about things like that in front of the child." Jack nodded, acting like a little adult. He turned and walked toward the door. "I'm going back to sleep." The bullet comments burst into mocking laughter. One comment read, "What is this male supporting role thinking? A mother and child are naturally close. Of course the kid will choose his mom. Asking pointless questions. If the kid actually told you the truth, you wouldn't like it anyway." Another said, "Willow can at least pretend a little. Jack practically has his disgust written all over his face." Another comment read, "His whole purpose is to recklessly dig his own grave until he's finally retaliated against, then lose his wife, lose his son, break his legs, and die miserably. That's the whole satisfying payoff of this kind of story." My heart suddenly skipped violently. Without another word, I grabbed the towel from Willow's hand. "I'll do it myself." Willow frowned slightly but didn't say anything in the end. Lying on the bed, I tried hard to digest the information the bullet comments had revealed. Suddenly, I sprang up, pulled off my pants, and stared at my own hairy legs. "So long, so warm. I absolutely refuse to let you abandon me." After thinking hard, I decided the first step was to change my attitude toward my wife and son. According to the bullet comments, I truly couldn't control the meeting between the male and female leads. Even if I stopped them once, they would meet again at the next corner. But if my son could see that I was a loving father, then perhaps when Willow and I divorced, he might choose to stay with me. Chapter 2. Thinking this, I looked up and saw Willow just coming out of the bathroom. The woman had only a thin bath towel wrapped around her body. Drops of water that hadn't been wiped dry slid slowly down her neck and disappeared into the curve of her cleavage. When she saw that I had already taken off my pants while sitting on the bed, the motion of her drying her hair paused for a moment, and her pupils instantly darkened. I was still racking my brain over how to be a good father. When I looked up again, Willow had already taken out the battle outfit I once bought for her from the wardrobe. She held the hollow-cut camisole in her left hand and pinched the purple lace in her right. The tips of her ears were slightly red. With a blank expression, she looked at me, as if asking for my opinion. The bullet comments floating before my eyes started screaming like crazy. Why did the screen go black? Is there something even my noble VIP membership isn't allowed to see? Male side character. I won't scold you anymore, just turn the camera back on so everyone can appreciate it together. Some fans of the original story were also cursing. I can't accept this. Even knowing how Jack was conceived, I still feel like the female lead was forced. Can't the male side character see that his wife always has a cold face every single time? More bullet comments followed. I think so too. The female lead clearly refused the first time, yet he keeps forcing her to wear it just to satisfy his weird fetish. Disgusting. It's fine. When I think about how his leg will soon be gone, I'm not that angry anymore. I took a deep breath, looking at Willow, who was about to change clothes. I suddenly grabbed the blanket, turned around, and covered myself. My voice was low. I'm not in the mood today. Let's sleep early. The moment those words were spoken, the air in the entire room seemed to freeze. The bullet comments erupted with excitement. Oh, changed your personality now? The female lead's expression doesn't look too good. What did the male side character do again? What else could it be? He tried forcing her to wear the battle outfit and got rejected. Look, her fingers holding that slip dress are turning white. I also noticed that Willow's expression looked terrible, especially after the words "not in the mood" came out, her face visibly darkened by more than a couple of shades. In the past, every time Willow changed into the battle outfit, she was reluctant, and I had to coax and trick her. But now, seeing the scrolling bullet comments, I didn't even dare breathe loudly. Willow said, "Got it." Just like the woman herself, Willow's voice was cool and distant. She casually tossed the clothes back into the wardrobe, lifted the blanket, and lay down beside me. I quietly pinched my own leg under the blanket and let out a long breath of relief. Luckily, I managed to save it. Love you, my dear old leg. See you tomorrow. Chapter 3. When I woke up the next day, daylight was already bright. As soon as I came out of the room, I saw two figures sitting in the living room, one big, one small. The moment I sat down, Willow stood up and went to the kitchen to get bread for me. Jack huffed and puffed as he carried the milk toward me. Climbing onto a stool, he was about to pour it for me. The bullet comments started complaining again. One comment cursed. The male side character really didn't die unjustly. What era is this? Still making women serve him, pure feudal leftover. Another comment agreed. Exactly. Why act like some big shot? He's even ordering Jack around. There are so many maids in the house, this is just making life harder for no reason. And he even calls it training the child to be observant. He's raising the little crown prince to knock on a cup and demand tea, set down a bowl and immediately expect someone to refill it. If you didn't know better, you'd think someone was fighting him for the heir's position. I say he's deliberately tormenting the female lead and Jack to satisfy his twisted control freak tendencies. My eyebrow twitched violently, and I reached out to grab Jack's small arm. Jack looked up at me in confusion. He said, "This time I added 1.5 spoons of sugar." I took the milk from him and poured it into the cup myself, gulping down 2 mouthfuls. I said, "For something this small, I can do it myself. Hurry and eat your breakfast." Jack looked at me as if he couldn't understand why I had suddenly become so strange, but he still turned around and sat back in his seat. Willow came out of the kitchen and looked at me somewhat awkwardly. She said, "We're out of salad dressing. I've already asked the maid to buy some." I picked up the sandwich with one hand. In a calm tone, I said, "It's fine. I can eat it without salad dressing." The air instantly fell silent. Willow looked at her now empty palm, her brows tightly furrowed. My son said in shock, "Dad, you didn't even hit Mom." Wait, what the hell? Was I really that terrible before? The next second, the bullet comments answered for me. I'm dying laughing. Last time the sandwich didn't have salad dressing. The male side character carried the female lead back to the room and punished her with family discipline. Jack was terrified and even told his classmates that Dad hits Mom every day. I took a bite of the sandwich, too guilty to look at the bullet comments anymore. A small piece of lettuce slipped out and dropped straight onto my leg. Seeing the stain on my clothes, I instinctively frowned. A tissue gently covered my leg, and immediately afterward, a slender, pale hand appeared in my field of vision. At the moment the tissue covered it, my pupils suddenly shrank. It was as if I saw my legs turn invisible and transparent, then grow wings and say goodbye to me. With lightning speed, I shook the lettuce off, then turned my head and met Willow's cool eyes. I said, "For small things like this, I can handle it myself." I forced a smile, then turned to my son and said, "Jack, you don't need to serve me tea or pour drinks for me anymore. I was just joking with you before. Didn't you understand? You're the crown prince of the Wang family. Why would you need to watch other people's expressions?" Jack's brows knitted tightly together, and his voice turned cold. "Dad, have you got something wrong with you?" I choked for a moment and replied speechlessly, "That's called being sick. This kid. I treat him well and he says there's something wrong with me." The whole meal felt awkward and uncomfortable, and the atmosphere was extremely strange. Chapter 4. Jack looked up at me several times, his little brows furrowing deeper each time. Willow's gaze seemed to drift over me from time to time, then slowly move away again. Only after Willow left the house with Jack did I throw myself heavily onto the sofa. Looking at the enormous wedding photo hanging right in the center of the wall, I rubbed my temples. Actually, I had secretly had a crush on Willow even before our marriage alliance. But she was like an iceberg. Many pursuers had crashed against her and failed. I was no exception. I had never chased anyone before, let alone someone as hard to approach as an iceberg like her. But my luck was unbelievably good. Just when I was completely at a loss, the marriage alliance between our two families tied us together. I still remember how I couldn't suppress my excitement when we had just gotten married. That day I prepared a surprise for her in the study, but I accidentally overheard a conversation between her and her best friend. Her friend complained, "George is a notorious playboy in our circle. You've really drawn the short straw." Willow's voice was faint and calm. I heard her say, "We're both getting what we need. Isn't that what a marriage alliance is?" The little flame that had just begun to burn inside me was completely extinguished. After pretending to be a devoted and gentle husband in front of Willow for only a few months, I completely gave up and started showing my true self. After all, just like she said, we were only taking what we needed from each other. So in the house, whether it was large things like appliances and furniture or small things like carpets, I left everything to her and let her decorate however she liked. Only this huge wedding photo, I insisted on placing it right in the center of the living room. Willow frowned slightly and said, "Putting it here doesn't match. It looks ugly." At the time, I was holding back my anger. It wasn't that she disliked the wedding photo, she simply disliked me. So I burned with rage. I started forcing her to wear clothes she didn't like and ordering her to do this and that, all just to satisfy myself. Sometimes Willow would show dissatisfaction, but the way she expressed it was only by lightly furrowing her brows. Willow looked very beautiful when she frowned. She was already as beautiful as a celestial fairy. I loved seeing her frown in anger. It was like a fairy from a painting coming to life, as if the calm painting had finally gained a different expression. Over the years, because she had always obeyed me and treated me attentively without ever arguing with me, I sometimes even had the illusion that she might like me too. But looking at that iceberg-like face, her expression toward others and toward me was no different at all. I knew I had fallen into one of life's classic illusions again. I said, "Leo, take that photo down." I raised my hand and pointed at the huge wedding picture. Back then, when we had just gotten married, I was still a hopeless romantic who believed in pure love and hung it up happily while still holding fantasies about Willow. 6 years later, that hopeless romantic had gradually realized that, in Willow's eyes, I was no different from anyone else. If I kept being stubborn, I would only become a love-struck ascetic suffering in romance. Actually, I wasn't even this angry at first, but the bullet comments floating in front of my eyes were like surveillance cameras, constantly live-streaming what the male lead and female lead were doing at that very moment. The bullet comments read, "The male lead bought drinks for everyone just so he could treat the female lead to milk tea." She looked up at him. "This is so sweet, I'm dying. It's the flavor the female lead loved back in college. The male lead is so thoughtful. She must be so touched." I closed my eyes and decided to sleep for a while first. When I opened them again, thunder was rumbling outside the window, and rain was pouring down in sheets. Chapter 5. My phone vibrated. It was Willow. She asked, "Did you fall asleep in the living room?" Her voice was cool and distant. I answered with a quiet After 2 seconds of hesitation, she continued, "I have to work overtime today. If it gets too late, I won't go back tonight." "You put Jack to bed." Jack was most afraid of thunder. Whenever it stormed like this, he would insist on sleeping with Willow. Before I could say anything, the bullet comments in front of my eyes began to scroll rapidly. One comment said, "The female lead really is working overtime, but our male lead is also at the company. On a rainy day there are only a few NPCs left in the office along with the male and female leads. Just thinking about it feels so romantic." Another wrote, I love couples like this, both strong. The male lead works hard and is ambitious, and the female lead is also a career-driven powerhouse. Unlike George, that useless rich second-generation guy who barely even goes to the company. Someone else commented, "Ah girl, I totally relate. My ex-boyfriend was also a rich second-generation guy. All he did all day was play video games and loaf around. No ambition at all. Never thinking about improving himself. He spent money recklessly, over $1 million a year. I told him to start a business but he wouldn't listen. Just seeing him made me angry, so I already broke up with him." Being called useless, I let out a long breath. I said, "All right then, just make sure you..." Before I finished speaking, I looked up and saw Jack standing not far away. His little face was stiff as he stood at the doorway. I had no idea how much of the conversation he had overheard. When I raised my head, the camera in front of my eyes shifted slightly for 2 seconds. My son said nothing, quietly taking off his backpack. He turned and walked into the room. Willow, however, spoke again. She said, "The wall behind you." I turned my head to look. While I had been sleeping, the wedding photo had already been taken down. She asked, "Where's the photo?" I answered honestly, "I had someone throw it away. Focus on your work. I'm hanging up." Willow didn't say anything. Her expression suddenly turned extremely gloomy, but I didn't notice at all. I simply stared at the empty wall behind me and frowned in thought. Maybe I should hang something there to fill the space. Leaving it empty really did look ugly. After dinner, the thunder outside still hadn't stopped. I rubbed my aching temples. When I opened my eyes again, Jack was standing in front of me holding a storybook. He said very seriously, "Let's go. I'll put you to bed." I was speechless. The roles had completely reversed, so I replied, "No need. Dad can sleep by himself." Just thinking about it made me irritated. Every time it thundered, Jack would start a battle with me over Willow. No matter how much I tried to gaslight and manipulate him psychologically, it never worked. When he saw me wave my hand in refusal, Jack bit his lip. Looking somewhat aggrieved, he said, "But Mom told me to put you to bed." I was speechless and had a slight headache. Before I could say anything else, a car horn suddenly sounded from the small courtyard outside. I froze. The bullet comments froze too. One comment appeared. "Why did the female lead come back? What about the male lead then?" Chapter 6. Jack hugged the storybook like he had just seen a savior. He ran over impatiently, grabbed his mother's hand, and complained with a serious face. He said, "Dad won't let me keep him company." Willow nodded. Even when facing her son, her expression didn't improve much. The screen full of question marks from the bullet comments left me confused as well. I asked, "Why did you come back?" Willow didn't answer. She lifted her eyes toward the empty wall behind me, and her gaze darkened a little more. I scratched my head and said, "Didn't you say it looked ugly? So I took it down." Her stare made my scalp prickle, and I explained awkwardly. But the bullet comments sensed something strange. Someone commented, "Does the female lead really only feel disgust toward the male side character like the original novel says? Why does this feel a little off?" Another comment replied, "Of course she does. Didn't you see how dark her face looks? She must have realized he refused to keep their son company and rushed back because she was worried he might bully Jack. Yeah, she definitely looks impatient." Willow patted Jack on the head and said, "Go back to your room first. I'll come over in a moment." Jack blinked and shifted his gaze to me. He asked, "Do you still want me to help you rank up today?" I waved my hands in panic. No. Jack pouted, and there seemed to be a glimmer of tears in his eyes, but he quickly put on a straight face again and asked unwillingly, "Then we're not running dungeon raids together either?" I nodded frantically. Jack puffed out his cheeks and turned around, walking back to his room. Willow raised her hand and untied the hair tie from her hair. A heavy gloom lingered between her brows. She asked, "Have you been in a bad mood lately?" I looked completely confused. I said, "No, I've been in a pretty good mood lately." The air fell silent for 2 seconds. She took a deep breath and nodded. Rain pattered outside the window while the bullet comments continued to scroll before my eyes. One comment said, "The female lead just left the male lead and went home like that. How is the plot supposed to continue now?" Another replied, "Don't worry. Even if they're not together physically, the bond between the male and female leads won't disappear. The red thread tying them together is stronger than steel." Almost immediately after that comment finished scrolling, Willow's phone on the bedside table rang. Hearing the sound of running water from the bathroom, I picked up her phone and called out, "Your phone." Chapter 7. The bullet comments were delighted. One comment said, "What did I tell you? The male lead is calling now, right? The male side character isn't actually going to answer it, is he? He has no respect for women's privacy at all. So low class." Another comment added, "Don't worry, even if he answers it, It'll only make the female lead hate him more. It's not like he hasn't done it before. In the original story, he once secretly answered the call and even cursed at the male lead. The female lead snatched the phone back and shoved him so hard he fell flat on his face. It was so embarrassing. At the same time, Willow's voice came from the bathroom. She said, "Answer it for me and ask what it's about." I tossed the phone back onto the bedside table like it was a hot potato. I said, "You should come out and answer it yourself." The sound of running water in the bathroom stopped abruptly. A moment later, Willow walked out wrapped in a bath towel. First, she fixed a heavy gaze on me. Then she lowered her head and picked up the phone beside her. The moment the call connected, a cheerful male voice sounded from the other end. The caller said, "Willow, you finally answered. Did you look at the 2 proposals I sent you earlier?" In the quiet room, the man's voice from the phone sounded especially clear. Willow didn't speak. Her gaze rested on my face as if she were waiting for something. I felt awkward too. Why was his voice so loud? The bullet comments were thrilled. Someone commented, "Is the male side character about to lose his mind again?" In the past, every time the female lead received a call from another man, he would explode with rage. Once he even tore her fleece jacket apart with his hands. And then the screen went black. Another comment said, "Classic abusive husband behavior. But it's fine. Every time he loses control, the female lead hates him a little more. It just makes our warm and gentle male lead look even better. And when his leg gets broken later, people will feel even less sympathy for him." Just seeing the words "broken leg" triggered me. I couldn't hold it in and started coughing violently. While coughing, I stood up and walked toward the bathroom. Cough, going to shower. My arm was suddenly grabbed. Willow took a deep breath, as if desperately suppressing something. Then she hung up the phone with a cold expression. She said, "It's after work hours. We'll talk tomorrow." Then she looked up at me. She said, "A man called me privately. Aren't you angry?" The room fell silent. Willow stared at me for a long time before finally letting go of my arm. That night, the sound of movement beside me tossing and turning continued until the middle of the night. The bullet comments kept popping up before my eyes. One comment said, "The female lead must regret it. Look, she almost looks like she's about to cry. She must regret not staying at the company to work overtime with the male lead and instead coming home to sleep beside this disgusting male side character." Another comment said, "I actually feel a little sorry for the male side character, sleeping in the same bed but dreaming different dreams. And he's still clueless like an idiot." Being described as an idiot left me speechless. I clenched my fists. "It's fine. I'll endure it. As long as my son agrees to leave with me, I'll immediately ask Willow for a divorce and wish her a lifetime of happiness." Chapter 8. I slept through the night without any dreams. When I woke up the next morning, Willow had already left. As I walked into the living room, my son was sitting at the dining table. When he saw me come over, he stared straight at me. I walked up and patted his head. Jack's small body stiffened, and then the tips of his ears slowly turned red. His neck subtly shrank back, the intention to avoid me obvious. My hand froze awkwardly in midair. The bullet comments mocked me. Can't he tell people dislike him? I almost wish I could live my whole life as clueless as the male side character. When will he realize he's just a male side character? Lately he's been trying so obviously to please them, and neither the mother nor the son pays him any attention. Another comment said, "Jack is just like his mom, totally double standard. He won't even let the male side character touch him. But the candy the male lead gave him yesterday is hidden under his pillow like treasure. He won't even eat it." My pupils shrank suddenly. Compared with the fact that Willow would eventually fall in love with someone else, this sentence hurt 100 times more. I often pressured my son to play games with me, but wasn't that for his own good? At such a young age he had already developed the bad habit of staying up late secretly reading and studying. If he kept that up when he started elementary school, what would happen then? I just wanted him to relax a little and play games. Yet it was treated as if I were harming him. And now, the bullet comments were telling me that no matter how hard I tried, my son would still like someone else more because of the story's plot. Unwilling to give up, I pulled a chair over and sat beside him. Jack glanced at me, then shifted his little bottom on the stool, moving a little farther away. My heart went cold, but I still forced a smile. "Kiddo, today let's rank up." Before I could finish, Jack lowered his head and took a sip of milk. Interrupting me, he said, "Dad, why are you calling me that? It's so cheesy. Just call me Jack." His voice was soft and childish, but his words were stiff. His head remained lowered, the tips of his ears red. The bullet comments were dying with laughter. Jack is already so annoyed with him. He has zero self-awareness. Jack is holding his breath so hard his face turned red. Yesterday when the male lead called him "kiddo," he answered sweetly. But today when the male side character says it, he rejects him with a cold face. Just like his mom, completely loyal to the male lead. My fingers paused, and I unconsciously frowned. Looking at Jack's bottom almost sliding off the stool, half his body leaning out just so he could stay farther away from me. Suddenly, Everything felt meaningless. Forcing things to continue like this. Watching my wife and son slowly move toward the so-called better male lead according to the story. Watching myself lose control in anger and eventually meet that ending. It was truly pointless. I withdrew my hand and turned back to my room. The bullet comments were still scrolling. One comment said, "Why do I suddenly feel a little sorry for the male side character?" I agree. Don't be a saint. It's his fault for not being the male lead. After Jack left, I entered his room. Seeing the candy hidden under the pillow, it felt as if my insides were being crushed. The power of the plot was truly terrifying. The anger inside me kept rising uncontrollably. I hadn't even met the so-called male lead yet, and I was already thinking of 100 ways to ruin him. I sat in my son's room for 10 minutes before finally standing up. Who was I? I was George Wong, the heir of the Wong family. Before becoming a husband or a father, I was first and foremost myself. Trying to please others won't earn favoritism. Humility won't earn sincerity. If you want to love others, you must first love yourself. Whether or not there is a woman beside you, you must make sure you live well. Become a mountain first, and forests will naturally gather around you. Become the sea first, and 100 rivers will naturally flow toward you. There was no need to exhaust myself with anxiety over someone leaving. When my brother David called, I had just finished arranging my work and was about to go out for a vacation. I didn't want to make a terrible mistake in a moment of anger and become the vicious male side character they kept talking about. I needed to go out and clear my mind. After all, neither Willow nor Jack ever cared where I went. But David said, "Help me pick up a kid." He sounded busy. The background on his end was noisy. Chapter 9. I asked in surprise. "Since when did you have a kid?" David clicked his tongue and said, "My cousins. I told you about it before. That guy treated her like trash and dumped her. She's been raising the child alone, which hasn't been easy. Recently she went abroad and left the kid with me, but I'm too busy to handle it." He continued, "Didn't you say your son is extremely withdrawn? Doesn't have many friends in kindergarten. My little niece is super sweet and really perceptive. Take her home and let her play with Jack for a couple of days." Before I could refuse, he sent me the address and hung up. I suddenly had a headache. This kindergarten seemed to be the same one Jack attended, but I had only gone there once. At that time, Jack had said coldly to me, "It's fine if mom picks me up. Whether you come or not doesn't matter." Seeing the obvious dislike on his face, I never went again. David wasn't exaggerating. His little niece really did have a sweet mouth. She hugged my arm and kept calling me uncle, and even insisted on sharing the candy she had received as a kindergarten reward with me. I couldn't help sighing. If not for Willow's influence and upbringing, maybe my son would have been this close to me too. But when I looked up, I noticed a somewhat familiar figure standing not far away. "Mom." Tian called out in delight and ran over to hug the woman. The woman smiled and looked toward me. She said, "George, long time no see." Looking at the gentle and graceful woman smiling at me, I was surprised. I said, "Alicia, didn't your brother say you went abroad?" It had been so long that I almost didn't recognize her. Compared with the little girl who used to follow David and me around calling us Big Brother, she had changed quite a bit. She said, "Yeah, I just got back." Since the child's mother had come to pick her up, I planned to leave, but Tian hugged my arm and kept shaking it. She said, "Uncle, stay with me a little longer." Faced with such a well-behaved and sweet child, I couldn't bring myself to refuse. Tian said she wanted fried chicken, so we found a nearby shop. What I didn't expect was to run into Jack there. He was being led by a tall, thin man. The man said cheerfully, "Jack, what do you want to eat today? Uncle's treating." Jack pointed toward a combo meal, but suddenly froze. The noisy fried chicken restaurant suddenly felt eerily quiet. Only the bullet comments in front of my eyes were scrolling wildly. What the hell is going on? The plot is completely messed up. Why did the male side character run into Jack and the male lead this early? Is the male side character going to lose his mind and hit Jack right here? "Look, Jack is so scared he stopped smiling," another comment said. But this scene is actually kind of satisfying. The male side character and the woman beside him look pretty compatible, and the little kid they're holding is well behaved too. At first glance it looks like they're a family of 3. Someone tugged my arm. Tian spoke softly. "Uncle, I can't see the menu board. Can you hold me so I can look?" Jack stood not far away. The bright smile on his face from earlier had completely disappeared. He looked at me quietly. His cold gaze made my heart sink. It was a bit tragic when I thought about it. Since he turned 3, Jack had never been this distant with me. Once when I returned home from a business trip, I saw Jack playing a game with Willow. Instinctively, I tried to join them, but the moment I got close, he looked at me with disgust and told me to go away, saying my beard scratched him. Only when I took out a toy did he reluctantly give me a quick kiss. At the time I told myself he was just a child. There was no need to take it too seriously. One day he would understand how much I loved him, but now it seemed A bullet comment appeared. Jack looks at him like he's looking at an enemy LOL. Kids really can't hide their emotions at all. If I were the male side character, I'd at least have the self-awareness to pretend I didn't see them. His son's face clearly says he doesn't want to acknowledge him. I stayed silent. Then I lifted Tion up in my arms, deliberately ignoring Jack not far away. From the corner of my eye, I saw Jack's little face tighten even more. He seemed nervous, or perhaps angry. Ever since he saw me in the restaurant, Jack had not smiled again. He quietly watched Tion and me, his eyes cold. Through the window, I saw Jack's small figure being led away by the men. Noticing that I seemed distracted, Alicia kept finding topics to talk about. She had always been lively and clingy since childhood, and her daughter was very similar to her. Gradually, she drew me into reminiscing about embarrassing childhood stories, and my mood improved a little. After we finished eating, I originally planned to say goodbye, but Tion blinked her big eyes and clung to me, refusing to let go, so I had no choice but to accompany them a little further along the way. I smiled helplessly and said, "She really is exactly like you were when you were little, so clingy." Alicia's eyes flickered slightly. She pressed her lips together and said, "George still remembers." We ended up walking all the way to the entrance of my building, and Tion was still hanging on me like a little octopus. In the end, Alicia had to forcibly peel Tion off me. Watching the mother and daughter gradually walk away, I turned and headed toward home. Chapter 10. But the moment I turned around, I was startled. Under the dim streetlight stood two figures, one big, one small. Jack had a stiff little face and clenched fists, while Willow showed almost no expression. Who knew how long they had been standing there waiting? When Jack saw me look over, he coldly turned his head away and walked toward the house. The bullet comments sensed something strange. Someone commented, "Don't you guys feel like these two look like creepy ghosts lurking in the dark?" Yeah, there's definitely that vibe. When the male side character turned around just now, it almost scared me to death. Both of them have such gloomy faces. But why? Don't they hate him? You guys don't get it. According to the plot, today the male lead was supposed to have dinner with the female lead and Jack. But for some reason Jack insisted on going home. So the male and female leads still haven't had time alone together. Of course the female lead is upset. I withdrew my gaze and stepped inside. Willow's eyes followed me. I rubbed my arms, suddenly feeling a little cold. The strange atmosphere continued all the way until dinner. Jack refused to eat. The maid looked troubled. "Sir, why don't you go call the young master? He's most afraid of you. Whatever you say, he listens." For some reason, those words sounded harsh to my ears. He had already eaten fried chicken earlier. Why should I force him to eat again? No matter what I did, he would only feel fear and disgust toward me. Why bother humiliating myself again? "Let him be," I said. Jack's room was quiet for 2 seconds. Suddenly, the door was yanked open. He stood there glaring at me with red eyes. He shouted, "If you don't care about me, are you going to be someone else's dad?" I froze. Before I could say anything, he suddenly burst into uncontrollable sobs as if he couldn't hold it in anymore. He cried, "Mom is a liar. She said Dad likes her the most. I thought if I acted cold like her, Dad would like me more too. Liar, liar, big liar." It had been far too long since I had seen any real expression on Jack's face. Not even a smile, not even a frustrated look. So when I saw him suddenly break down and cry hysterically, I was completely stunned. The bullet comments were stunned too. What's wrong with Jack? Why is he suddenly crying so hard? Something feels off. Isn't Jack supposed to hate George? Why does it sound like he actually likes him a lot? Jack cried so hard he could barely breathe, as if pouring out all the grievances he had been holding inside. He sobbed. "Dad hugged another kid today. I didn't eat dinner and he didn't care, and he won't let me play games with him anymore. I tried so hard to act cold, but he didn't like me more and more. He likes other kids now." In the empty living room, Jack's crying echoed loudly. Chapter 11. I came back to my senses and crouched down. Jack's face was flushed red from crying. His cheeks were covered with tear tracks, and the sight made my heart ache. I patted his head and said, "What are you talking about? How could Dad not like you?" I reached out to wipe his face. Jack immediately burrowed into my arms. He said, "Dad doesn't like people like Mom who act cold anymore. So you don't like me either, right? Is it because that auntie today had such a pretty smile that you like her kid who smiles so nicely? Then I'll learn from them too." Dad, don't like other kids. My head filled with question marks. What exactly was this child talking about? Jack hadn't let me hold him for 2 or 3 years already. Even though he always obeyed what I said, whenever I tried to hug or kiss him, he would frown and resist, then keep a cold face and stay far away from me. Now Jack was sobbing uncontrollably, clutching my clothes as if I might disappear at any moment. He said, "I won't copy Mom anymore. Dad, please don't hate me." He sniffed and hiccuped between sobs. I turned my head slightly. Even though my son's words were all jumbled, I still caught the key point. That was, my son didn't dislike me at all. Then it was obvious. If my son wasn't close to me, the problem was completely Willow. I turned my head. Willow froze for a moment, looking a little confused. Under my stare, she seemed somewhat innocent. She said, "I didn't do anything." "Really?" she hurriedly explained. But even the bullet comments sensed something strange. One comment said, Right, you didn't teach him anything. You just told your son that George likes women like you. Another replied, "Why does that sound more like she was bragging to her son?" Jack seemed to pour out all the grievances he had held in for years. He clung to my clothes tightly. Even when he cried until he was exhausted, he still refused to let go. Helpless, I carried him back to his room and laid him on the bed. Jack's eyes were red and watery. He said, "Dad, I'll behave. Please don't stop liking me, okay?" Pouting, he reached under his pillow and took out that piece of candy. He said, "A corporate slave, uncle at the company gave this to me. Dad, you eat it. Don't start liking other kids." Looking at the candy, warmth spread through my chest. The bullet comments were stunned. Someone commented, "Wait, what's going on? Didn't the male lead get along really well with Jack? Weren't they practically becoming buddies? What happened?" Another said, "Jack really shouldn't read just any book he finds. Where did he even learn that word from?" I suddenly feel bad for the male lead. After spending so much time with Jack, all he got was the title, corporate slave. Another comment said, "But I've always wanted to say this, the female lead never asked the male lead to take care of the child. Every time it was the male lead who voluntarily went to play with Jack and took him out to eat fried chicken and stuff. Kids obviously can't resist junk food like that." Looking at Jack's eyes, washed bright and sparkling by tears, I couldn't help asking, "So when you ignored Dad and wouldn't let me hug you, you were just copying Mom?" Jack's little face turned red again, but this time he didn't put on a cold expression. Instead, he answered obediently, "That's because whenever Dad hugs me, I can't help smiling like an idiot. But if I do that, I won't look cool anymore." I fell silent. Jack stared at me nervously again. He said, "I don't want to copy Mom anymore." Not at all. He looked so nervous, as if he were afraid I might say I hated him. It felt absurd, yet at the same time, everything suddenly made sense. My son really had been imitating Willow's behavior all along. I had simply never thought in that direction before. Then I remembered the bullet comments saying Willow and the male lead were tied together by a red thread stronger than steel. After hesitating for 2 seconds, I carefully asked, "Jack, if Dad and Mom..." I was still thinking about how to phrase it when Jack suddenly sat up. He said, "I can learn from that other kid. If Dad doesn't like me like this, I'll become the kind of person Dad likes." After thinking for a moment, I realized he meant Alicia's daughter. Speechless, I said, "You don't need to imitate anyone. Just be yourself. You're my son. No matter what kind of personality you have, Dad will like you." Jack's eyes lit up as he stared at me without blinking. "Really?" "Of course," I replied. The bullet comments were speechless. One comment said, "The plot is completely off track now. Why doesn't Jack hate the male side character? He seems to like him a lot instead." Another comment replied, "Well, what did you expect? Kids aren't stupid. Who would randomly want to accept some uncle who suddenly appears as their dad? It's not like he doesn't already have a father." Another said, "Actually, the male side character has always treated the kid pretty well. You can tell he really loves him." I stood up and sighed as I looked at Jack, who had cried himself to sleep. When I turned around, my eyes met Willow's as she stood at the doorway. Chapter 12. She frowned slightly, that pretty face full of conflict. As soon as we came out of our son's bedroom, Willow spoke. "I didn't teach him anything strange. I thought that was just his personality." I nodded. After hesitating for a few seconds, I said, "I know your personality is naturally cold and distant. The child was just imitating you without realizing it. But these past few years, I've really been tired." Willow pressed her lips together. I continued, "Anyway, we don't really have feelings for each other. Maybe we should just get a divorce. I can change too." We spoke at the same time. The air fell completely silent. Willow's expression turned terrible. She stared at me as if she couldn't believe what she had heard. "What did you say?" she asked. I was also irritated. Those bullet comments had been tormenting me these past few days. I was almost going crazy from them. What my son said made me realize something. Willow knew I liked her. Yet after marriage she had remained just as cold. I used to think that was simply her personality. After all, we were already married through an alliance and had a child. And I did genuinely like her. I thought life could continue like that. But the bullet comments and the appearance of the male lead made me realize something else. Even someone as cold and distant as Willow would eventually lose control and go crazy because she fell in love with the male lead. Willow's pupils suddenly tightened. She stared at me for several seconds and repeated hoarsely, "I can change too." I frowned slightly. Our son was still young, so his behavior came from imitation. But Willow was different. A person's natural personality was very difficult to change. Still, seeing her pale face, I ultimately said nothing. When I came out of the bathroom, the bullet comments were already going insane. Damn it, why did the screen go black again? I hate that I'm reading this novel on a legitimate platform. Another comment said, male side character, I won't scold you anymore, just describe what your wife is wearing right now and share it with everyone. Hurry. I remained silent and looked toward Willow on the bed. Her face still had that iceberg-like calmness, but a blush had spread from the tips of her ears all the way down to her neck. In the past, I did enjoy forcing Willow to play certain role-playing scenarios, doctor and nurse, master and maid, things like that. Watching a cold, untouchable beauty fall from her pedestal, no one could resist that. But this was the first time she had taken the initiative. Seeing the marks on her wrists where the chains had rubbed the skin red, I stepped forward. Did you tie them yourself? I asked. Perhaps because it was her first time doing something like this. Willow's face flushed even deeper with embarrassment. Her voice trembled. Yes. Didn't you say last time you liked it like this? After a pause, she pressed her lips together and said softly, no divorce. I frowned. Willow seemed anxious. No divorce, she repeated stubbornly. Before I could respond, the bullet comments were already scrolling wildly. One comment said, what did he say? Tied what? What are you two doing? Let me see. Another said, wow. The male side character and the female lead are into something pretty intense privately. What expression does the female lead have right now? She must feel humiliated. Humiliated. I quietly looked at Willow. She leaned against the bed, perhaps because her movements were restricted, or because the restraints were too tight. Her brows were slightly furrowed. The fabric she wore was extremely light and revealing, and the curves of her figure were impossible to ignore. A friend once said Willow was the only woman in our social circle who could enchant people without using any tricks at all, but now, she had chosen to use one. I swallowed. The bullet comments seemed to blur automatically as my hand brushed across Willow's thigh. The moment the woman let out a soft gasp, a chain of red exclamation marks exploded before my eyes, nearly giving me a heart attack. The bullet comments went crazy. It's wrong for the male side character to touch the female lead. She belongs to the male lead. The ending is already decided. How could it possibly change? However, the male side character humiliates her now. The plot will later punish him the same way. Right now it's the female lead who's tied up, later it'll be his own legs. My hand jerked back instantly. Willow bit her lower lip. Her eyes were hazy, as if asking why I had stopped. Beauty is a blade. Temptation leads to disaster. I was about to divorce her, and now she was seducing me. I covered my eyes, refusing to look at Willow's body, and refusing to look at those flashing red warning marks. The air felt frozen. After some rustling sounds, Willow's voice came quietly. Go to sleep. I lowered my hand and looked at the woman who had already turned her back to me. One bullet comment said, did the female lead just cry? Another replied, maybe it hurt. The male side character didn't even help untie her dot. Another comment said, I feel like things aren't that simple. I slept without dreams. The next morning, the moment I opened my eyes, a child's face was suddenly magnified in front of me. I jumped in fright. Jack was smiling brightly. His eyes curved into crescents. Good morning, Dad, he said. Then he grabbed my head and planted a loud kiss on my cheek. I sat there completely stunned. The bullet comments started buzzing again. Oh my God, the cold and cute rival has arrived, pure cuteness. How did the female lead give birth to such an adorable son? First thing in the morning and I already want to become a mom. Jack climbed onto the bed and even stepped on Willow, who had just woken up. Dad, hurry up and get up for breakfast, he shouted. Chapter 13. I began to doubt myself. When I lowered my head, I met Willow's gaze. There was a hint of gloom between her brows as she stared at our son with a dissatisfied look. Jack, however, seemed not to notice at all. He said, Dad, I learned from the maid how to make a fried egg this morning. Do you want to try it? I made it especially for you. I rubbed his head and lifted him down from the bed. The bullet comments were still jumping across my vision. Ha ha ha, I'm dying. Look at the female lead's resentful eyes. Early in the morning her husband got stolen away. Who can she complain to? Another comment wrote, the female lead belongs to the male lead. The female lead belongs to the male lead. Someone replied, stop shouting already. The male lead hasn't even said a few words to the female lead yet, while the male side character has slept with her over and over again. We're not blind, we can tell which pairing actually has chemistry. My footsteps paused and I turned to look. Willow's gloomy expression, which she hadn't had time to hide, immediately entered my sight. My son followed my gaze and turned around too. After a few seconds of silence, he spoke in a thoughtful tone like a little adult. Dad, this morning I called Anna, the most popular girl in our class, on my little watch phone. She said nobody likes cold people. Everyone likes warm people. So from now on I'm going to be a warm kid too. I couldn't help laughing out loud. The bullet comments burst into laughter. Is this kid throwing shade at his own mom? Jack's inner thoughts, this mom is impossible to carry. This was the liveliest breakfast Willow and I had shared in 6 or 7 years of marriage. Jack seemed determined to make up for all the words he hadn't spoken during those years. He poured coffee for me and ran back and forth from the kitchen bringing out the fried egg he had made. I had just finished eating when Jack ran over again. Dad must be tired. Right. I'll massage your shoulders and legs. Willow, sitting across from us, looked completely speechless. Chapter 14. The bullet comments erupted in laughter again. The kid has completely let himself go. When his dad used to order him around he kept a cold face. Turns out he secretly enjoyed it. The youngest sycophant I've ever seen. No competition. Another comment added. Now I'm even starting to suspect that the female lead secretly enjoyed it under that cold face too. The next comment shouted again. The female lead belongs to the male lead. The female lead belongs to the male lead. Someone replied. Judging from that comment, I feel like you're already crying in desperation. Today was the weekend. We didn't have to work. And Jack didn't have school either. The little guy became like a tail attached to me, running around behind me all day calling Dad, Dad. Willow didn't say anything the whole time. She just quietly watched us, until lunchtime, when Willow suddenly disappeared. Jack enthusiastically poured tea and served water for me, not caring at all where his mother had gone. The bullet comments, however, were broadcasting everything in real time. Where did the female lead go? Aren't all her clothes custom made? Why is she going to a women's clothing store? Another comment said, didn't I say the plot is inevitable? Even in a clothing store she runs into the male lead. If that's not fate, what is? The female lead forgot her wallet and someone started mocking her. Then the male lead appeared like a savior. The official couple is unbeatable. My hand paused while picking up food. For some reason, my heartbeat suddenly sped up. It felt like I was expecting something, or perhaps worrying. The bullet comments kept scrolling. The person above must be delusional. The female lead isn't without a phone. Why would she need someone else to pay for her? Another comment wrote, the female lead walked right past the male lead without even raising her eyes. I doubt she even remembers having this coworker. Another said, this is hilarious. I've never seen a male and female lead miss each other perfectly every single time. What exactly are you people still holding on to? While I was still lost in thought, Jack served me another bowl of rice and asked with wide round eyes, Dad, why did you stop eating? Is today's food not tasty? Seeing the bullet comments say Willow was already on her way back, I snapped out of it. Honestly, no matter how good the food was, I couldn't eat 5 bowls. Jack watched me take another bite with satisfaction and smiled. Dad, if you don't like Mom's cold face, you can change to another mom. When you were with that auntie last time. Dad smiled very happily. I nearly choked. Jack's words suddenly stopped. He glanced nervously toward the door and shut his mouth. I turned my head. Willow stood at the entrance holding 2 shopping bags. The bullet comments exploded again. The female lead comes home only to find her son digging a hole for her dot. I'm dying. Look at her expression. If Jack weren't her own child she'd probably hang him up and beat him by now. Another comment replied, you think being her own child means he won't get hung up and beaten? Willow cast Jack a cold glance and turned back into the room. 10 minutes later, I was still eating with my head down when the bedroom door opened. Jack looked up and suddenly began coughing violently. Chapter 15. I frowned and patted his back. See, that's what happens when you eat too fast. You choked, didn't you? As I spoke, I kept patting his back and lifted my head. Then I choked too, not far away. A blush crept across Willow's cheeks as she turned her head to look out the window. She was wearing a white academy-style knit dress. It was the first time I had ever seen her wear something like that. She asked, is it ugly? Willow's voice was still calm and light, and for a moment I didn't know how to answer. It's not ugly, I said. It's just a little strange. After all, Willow's usual style was the cool and elegant type. Suddenly switching to a sweet, youthful style was honestly hard to get used to. Besides the sense of mismatch, it also felt strangely familiar. The bullet comments gave me the answer. Willow is copying her exactly. She discovered the only way to defeat the other woman, become the other woman. Isn't that genius? That's when I realized what felt wrong. This was literally Alicia's outfit from that day. Exactly the same. Seeing the tips of Willow's ears turn completely red, I suddenly wondered if I had misunderstood something. Was the plot really impossible to change? The next second, she said, honey, I also bought that foot-soaking soap you said felt nice last time. I'll help you with it tonight. Willow's voice turned sweet and soft. The entire living room fell silent. Jack suddenly covered his ears. Oh, Mom, you're so scary. That's terrifying. Don't talk like that. I tried my best to hold back my laughter. while the bullet comments completely lost control. One moment of initiative, a lifetime of social anxiety. Another comment said, I'm cringing so hard my toes are digging into the floor. Willow, please just keep being your cool goddess. Winning back your husband does not mean making him laugh to death. I expected awkward. I didn't expect this awkward. I took a couple of deep breaths before finally suppressing the laughter. Willow looked like she wanted to say something else, but I was afraid I'd burst out laughing again. So I quickly stopped her. All right, let's eat first. Throughout the entire meal, I kept glancing up at Willow. The more I looked at her, the funnier it became. After hesitating for a few seconds, I couldn't resist secretly taking a picture and sending it to David. He replied almost instantly, Wait, bro, is that Willow? Has she lost her mind? What kind of roleplay are you two doing? Hold on, this outfit. My heart jumped. Before I could withdraw the message, David's voice message popped up. My hand slipped, and it started playing. He said, So you made your wife cosplay my sister? Look at this mess. Why didn't you just say earlier that you liked my sister? She's had a crush on you for years. I immediately covered my son's ears. Jack hadn't heard it, but the blush on Willow's face disappeared completely. I felt awkward and wanted to say something, but after seeing Willow's expression, I said nothing. That night, Willow brought in the foot-soaking water while still wearing that dress. I wanted to remind her to change clothes, but I didn't know how to say it. Until I finished showering and lay down on the bed. Our son had already gone back to his room. Willow came out of the bathroom, and I finally couldn't hold it in anymore. Why are you still wearing that outfit? Willow pressed her lips together and said nothing. Chapter 16. I walked over and said helplessly, You've already finished showering. The next second, arms wrapped around my neck, the woman stood on her tiptoes and kissed me urgently. The bullet comments howled in protest. I'm forcing myself to ship you two and you still won't show us anything. This time there were no warnings about my legs being broken in the future. The entire screen was just people begging for a live broadcast. As the moment deepened, I held the back of her head and deepened the kiss. She paused for a second, her eyes slowly turning moist, and her movements became even more proactive. When we came out of the bathroom again, I was already exhausted. Yet Willow was sitting on the edge of the bed without moving. She was still wearing that dress. I frowned. Seriously, we're about to sleep and you're still not changing. The bullet comments scrolled rapidly. Your wife is crying. Little pearls are dropping. I froze. I lifted Willow's face, and sure enough, her eyes were red and shining with tears. I swallowed. Good grief, why did Willow look so? What's wrong with you? I asked. The bullet comments began debating. Is the male side character made of wood or something? Why keep asking? Just kiss her until she faints so she stops crying. You wouldn't show us anything earlier, and now you want advice on how to comfort your wife? What else could it be? She probably thinks you'll only sleep with her if she dresses like that woman. So of course she feels miserable. I paused, then couldn't help laughing a little. Willow spoke in a hoarse voice. You like her that much? So much that, you'll only touch me if I dress like this. George, you're such a two-timing jerk. I choked on my words. Willow's tears fell even harder. When you liked me, you made me wear all those outfits and I agreed. But when you stopped liking me, you wouldn't even touch me. I tried so hard to seduce you and you still didn't react. I noticed it long ago. You won't let me massage your legs anymore. And you're not interested in my body either. You used to like it so much. I had to dress like her before you'd touch me. How could you? She took a deep breath. Can we not divorce? Okay, I can change just like Jack if you like it. I can wear these things for you. I can learn from that woman. Just don't go looking for her. I can do it better. The bullet comments filled with ellipses. I can't watch this. Have some dignity, please. If dignity means losing your husband, then yeah, forget dignity. He's already asking for a divorce. After 2 seconds of silence, I decided to tell her the truth. I don't dislike you, and I haven't fallen for someone else. It's just because. I opened my mouth, but realized I couldn't say a single word about the plot. My eyes widened. What the hell? There's even a censorship system. I tried again. My mouth moved, but no words came out. Willow stared at me closely. Honey, you look so silly. Your mouth keeps opening and closing like a catfish. I was speechless. The bullet comments were speechless. I stared at the ceiling helplessly and finally decided to give up. Willow sighed as if resigning herself, then leaned forward and kissed me again. Whatever the reason, she said softly, as long as you stay by my side. When I came out of the bathroom again, I was completely drained. Willow wrapped her arm around mine. Honey, a lot of girls at my company receive flowers from their boyfriends. I lazily responded. Her cool voice sounded again. My assistant's husband brings her lunch every day. I answered with another sleepy already drifting towards sleep. Chapter 17. Willow fell silent. The bullet comments burst into laughter. One comment said, Willow still can't bring herself to say it directly. She's so awkward. Why not just tell your husband to come to the company and make your relationship official? Another comment replied, but if that happens, won't the male lead and the male side character finally meet? Oh wow. If you hadn't said that, I would have forgotten the male side character even existed. My eyes widened suddenly. Lust really is a blade over one's head. How did I forget I was the male side character? After 2 seconds of rapid thinking, I turned my head and said, flowers are easy. The problem is I don't know how to cook. Willow's eyes lit up. I do. You only need to deliver it. I was speechless. The next day, I put on the domineering CEO suit I hadn't worn in ages. Carrying a lunchbox and holding a bouquet of flowers, I headed straight to Willow's company. The bullet comments were lively again. Love triangle showdown. Honestly, I've switched sides lately. Sorry male lead, but the female lead and the male side character really have amazing chemistry. I clenched my fist slightly, feeling oddly nervous. The receptionist greeted me warmly. President Wong, you're here. Director Willow is waiting for you ahead. I froze and looked up toward Willow not far away. Why was she standing there instead of working? Then she linked her arm with mine and led me around the company 5 or 6 times. I was starting to suspect she had gotten lost. The bullet comments laughed. Look at the female lead scheming. She's making sure everyone knows her husband is here. I couldn't help smiling. My legs were starting to ache. I was just about to say that was enough, when I looked up and saw a tall, thin man standing in front of us. The bullet comments instantly filled with exclamation marks. My body stiffened. I remembered him, the man who took Jack out for fried chicken last time. The one the bullet comments called the male lead. The moment he saw me, he waved. Ah, you must be George. He had clearly recognized me as well. Our eyes met. A strange silence hung in the air for 2 seconds. Willow frowned, obviously not understanding why this man was blocking our path. The bullet comments went wild. It's coming. It's coming. The dramatic moment is coming. I can't wait for the female lead to shout, stop fighting, both of you. The next second, Makoto leaned closer and asked me. Sorry, I wanted to ask you something. Looking embarrassed, he scratched his head. Well, what kind of milk powder does Jack usually drink? My son is about the same age as him, but he's half a head shorter. My wife and I are both worried. I asked Jack last time and he said you were the ones who bought it. I've been wanting to ask you for a while. If it's convenient, could you tell me the brand? I froze. Chapter 18. My ears rang. I was completely stunned. The bullet comments were even more shocked than I was. Are you kidding me? The female lead is married already, and now the male lead is married too. The plot has completely collapsed. I'm dropping this story. Same here. I'm quitting this novel. Then the bullet comments gradually faded. A hand waved in front of my eyes. Willow frowned slightly, and for once the iceberg-like face carried a trace of concern. What's wrong with you? She asked. I looked down at my legs. Suddenly, I wanted to laugh. Broken legs. Irreversible plotlines. Those crazy bullet comments had been scaring me all along. Once we entered Willow's office, I fell silent again. Willow seemed to have forgotten to take something down. Following my shocked gaze, her face instantly turned red. We took 2 photos back then. There wasn't space to hang both at home. In Willow's office hung the same wedding photo she had once called ugly. She stood there awkwardly without speaking. Willow's personal assistant pushed the door open and walked in. She looked surprised when she saw me. President Wong, you finally showed up. Director Willow always says you're extremely busy, yet you still make time every day to send her flowers and lunch. President Wong, you're such a devoted husband. We're all so jealous. Wait, a devoted husband? Sending flowers every day? I lifted my head to look at Willow. All I saw was the woman trying to maintain her cold expression, while her face had already turned completely red. My iceberg, it seemed, had melted long ago.